I'm out here in my workshop, and right this second, I'm trying to remember the video that I mentioned it in, but I can't. So I'm just going to press on. I actually mentioned it in 2 videos, and the idea is that if you use the same kind of wood for drawer slides or sliding parts, they will wear out quicker than if you use 2 different types of wood. Now, this information came to me several years ago. I'm talking maybe 20 years ago. And I know that I read it somewhere, or possibly, I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere. And I don't know that there's any evidence out there to support it, because it kind of sounds like the type of information that an old timer would have from doing stuff like that over and over again. So one time he made, he's making, say, small desks with a drawer in it. And one time he made the runners out of a different type of wood, and he noticed that those lasted a lot longer. That type of thing. I don't know that there are any scientific tests out there, but I thought that I could rig something up to test out if it's actually true. So here it is right here. I'll get in closer and show it a little bit better in a minute. Originally I was going to build this on camera, but I didn't see the point actually. It's rather simple. And the last mechanism that I made to test out something was the one for opening and closing the cupboard door over there to test the handle. And I think the building process of the mechanism that does that was lost on a lot of viewers. The idea there was to show how you could do something like that quickly and efficiently, just to test out your idea. So I'm going to kind of break it down here a little bit. I've got my lathe chuck up there for weight, and this arm moves back and forth. I'm going to start it just to show that. And it is loosely attached to these 2 runners down here with nails that are just dropped in the holes that I drilled. Take that out of the way for a second so you can see that. And the runners are exactly the same size, exactly the same thickness, the same width, everything. And then they ride in these slots that are loose, they're not tight. And there's no grit in the slots for them to rub down on. So this should be a fair test. I'm just going to drop those nails back in, and I'm going to put my lathe chuck back on. This thing is about, I don't know, at least 10 pounds. It's pretty heavy. So that will create a lot of friction on those 2 small parts. I made the parts that small so that the effect, will be noticeable after a relatively short time. Because in reality, it would take years for wooden drawer slides to wear out to the point where you would have to replace them. And this is something that people don't seem to realize. They think that, okay, if you, going by what I said, if you use the same type of material for the drawer slide, in about 2 or 3 days of use, it'll be useless. And that's not the case. Like I said, you're talking about years. So I added that little strip on there so that I could tighten the chuck on so it wouldn't fall off. To make the drill run, I've just got a piece of plywood here with a screw sticking out the bottom a little bit, and the head will contact the switch and push it down just enough to get it running. And then I'll clamp that in place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this to run for at least an hour, and then I'm going to come in and check to make sure that A, the battery hasn't worn out, and B, to see if there's any actual wear or any noticeable difference in the amount of wear on each part. Okay, important to note that I cut out these strips on my table saw. I didn't do any sanding. Everything that contacts here is just a table saw cut. There's no sanding, no smoothing. There's no lubrication whatsoever. I didn't put on wax or Vaseline or anything else. This is raw wood on wood. Okay, I don't know how many strokes it's been, but already I can see something happening here, and that's the sawdust that's piled up on both ends, on the ends of each strip, and already it's a noticeably bigger pile on the maple strip. So like I said, I'm going to leave it for an hour and I'm going to come back and check in. Okay, it's been a half an hour and I'm just going to stop it here by removing the battery, mainly because the drill is getting really hot and the battery is pretty warm too. So I'm going to put this one on the charge. I've got a fresh one over there ready to go, but I'm going to give this about an hour to cool down. Now in the meantime, I've been checking back and forth on it just to make sure it's still running. And right off the bat, I can see that the maple has to be wearing more than the oak because there's more sawdust behind each end of it than the oak. So that's the way it looks right now. Like I said, it took almost no time at all for dust to start piling up in front of the maple strip. So I'm going to come back in about an hour, start it up again, and leave it run for another half an hour. And then I think what I'll do is I'll check it. I let it run for about another 40 minutes. So that's more than an hour, and I'm not going to run it anymore because my drill is actually starting to smoke. I can smell it burning in here. These are not made for that low speed operation like that because the cooling fan doesn't cool the motor. So I'm going to take it off now and do an actual measurement of the parts. I'm not expecting a measurable difference after only 1 hour, to be honest. And I can't actually feel a difference. Possibly some. But I did measure these before I got started, and they were exactly the same. Like within like a couple thousandths. So this is the maple one first, and I've got 720 on this end, and I've got 727 on the other end. And then the oak, I've got 727, 728 on this end, and 723. So this is slightly bigger, but not a huge amount. So I think that to really get this to play out so that it would be an issue, you would have to do it for longer. But as demonstrated, having this run for a little over an hour, and each stroke of the thing like was one back and forth or open and close cycle, and it did that well over 2,000 times. So you can see how much wear would come of it. Now, when I do look at the dust that's left over in the tracks, obviously the maple one wore out more. And I'm looking at and I'm measuring this part and this part, but I'm not measuring the part that they were rubbing on as well. This maple side over here could be slightly deeper, and the difference in hardness of these woods is not very much. Typically the maple is a little bit harder, so it really should have wore out less. So in conclusion, in the long run, it may make a small amount of difference, but overall I don't think it's that big of an issue that it would make it important for you to use a different wood for the drawer slide.